Hi, Shmuley. Oh, sure. I thought
This was an actual shower room. When you walked in, there were 2 tubs here. They were the baths. And in that, instead of water, was lye. You know what lye does to you? What does lye do to your skin? So here, people think now they're going to get clean, they're out of the cattle cars, they're out of the ghettos, and they go and they step in a bath of lye. And then above them, they take a look and they see shower heads. And the experiment that the Nazis did was sometimes they used boiling water and sometimes they used ice water. You see, they wanted to see what happens to the body before the gas. Which would be better, the ice water or the boiling water? And here are the controls. The Nazis left so quickly, they didn't have time to destroy it. So there's so much evidence that was left here. And I want you to see it, and I want you to take it in, because when I'm not here to tell these stories, or the other survivors, you are going to have to. We're leaving it up to you. So listen carefully. You will be the future leaders. Here are the controls. The controls for the water up here. And now we're going to go into the next room. Please follow me, though. You are standing in a gas chamber. You are standing in a gas chamber. I want you to look at the coloration of the walls. This wasn't painted on here. There was no Michelangelo painting a ceiling. The coloration is because of the gas that was thrown down through those openings from the roof. And those gas pellets were inhaled and burned the entire esophagus for 20 minutes. Excruciating. And there's a hole right here against the wall, and you'll see that at every gas chamber. The Nazis always had a hole in the wall so that they can look and see what was going on inside. They got delight to see what it was and what was happening here. They took delight in it, to see the mothers holding their babies and the babies screaming and crying and people clawing at these walls. Take a look at the finger marks on these walls. Just take a look. These people were trying to get out desperately. They were trying to reach as high as they could, lifting their children as high as they could, giving them their last breaths.
I read about a report from the Sonderkommandos where they said as follows. When they were removing the corpses from tough, hardened soldiers, there'd be a mass pile up to the opening to the outside. Each one gasping for a last breath, a precious last second of life. And who would be at the very top? Who would be living one more second? Who would be on the top of the pile with his mouth and nose up to get one last gasp of air? The strongest. The weakest were on the bottom, and the stronger soldiers would jump on them, and then higher and higher, and the strongest was the one on top of the pile. But not when there were Jewish families taken here. When families like Max's family and others, so many of our Jewish 60, 70,000 Jews that perished here, it was not the strongest on top. When families were taken here, do you know who they found on top? The children. Because as the parents walked in here, and they saw that it was their last few moments, and it was precious last moments of air, they didn't push to be on top to live for one more second. They lifted their children up. They brought their children up to the top so they should have one last second. Parents were on the bottom, and the smallest, the tiniest, the weakest of children were collected on top. They're the ones who died on top. When I walk in there, I think, who would I hold up? Who would I push up to the top? Would your parents push you up to the top? Would your parents want you to give you one last second? If you have a smaller sibling, a child, would you try to push them to the top? Would you want your younger sibling to have one last second of air? And one last moment of life? Who would you push to the top? Who would you rise up? Who would you give that last second of life to? Who is most precious to you? And who do you keep on the bottom? Who do you say, no, I got to hold up your younger sibling. I have to hold up the young child. Choiceless choices. For at the end, all families perished here. There are no survivors from the walls of the gas chamber.
You might want to turn around. There's a little hole in the wall. They were not satisfied that they were killing us, but they wanted to look in to see how fast we were dying, to either increase the gas or decrease the gas.
There used to be 3 barracks of shoes here. 800,000 shoes were found here. They said there was a mountain of shoes here that obliterated the sun. That's how high it was. Majdanek is noted as the camp of the shoes. And this year, for the first time, they closed off our access to the shoes. But I want you to try to get to the end here. And I want you to just look at the shoes and imagine who might have been walking in the shoes. Take a close look. Were they Shabbat shoes? Were they hiking shoes? Were they baby shoes? A woman's? A party shoe? You know, when we wake up in the morning and we go to the bathroom, we take so many things for granted. You pick up your toothbrush, you brush your teeth, you wash, you shower, you brush your hair. Life wasn't like that here. There was no toothbrushes. There was no hairbrushes. There was no showers. And sometimes the toilets were your own clothes. You went in your own clothes. So could you imagine? We sometimes complain about these things. Next time you reach for a toothbrush and all of the things for you to get ready in the morning, think of what life was like here in the other camps without all of those very simple, elementary things that we just take for granted.
In a little bottle, and the bottle is buried inside the cabinet. Take a walk up in the van, go over to the building there, and just take a look at some of the artwork that was done by prisoners here in the camp. for the pleasure of the guard. You're walking in, go to the sides and the perimeter, okay?
Max and some of our other survivors, Sam and a few others, lived in such barracks, Joe. And what Max is going to do is explain to you the routine of the barracks, what happened, and what happened with that Pell. You'll learn about that word today, and some other things that happened.
The routine was you got up in the morning at dawn, close your eyes, and you fell out on the Reveille Square, which was called the Appel Square. 3,000 people in a military manner, 5 abreast, like in the army. There was a foreman for each barracks. He would make the count and report it to a roving guy that would go from barracks to barracks. Then, when it was finished, regardless what the weather was, we waited for the Oberscharführer of Fikes, that was the head of the camp, and the most brutal guy there ever was. So in each camp, the brutality of the commander that had a full hand to do with us whatever he wanted determined how we were treated. If he decided to wait an hour or two before he comes out, he had less people to count. Once this was over, he would come out daily on a white, beautiful horse, and cowardly in the back. We were all facing the middle, in the back, with a whip, single out as many people as he wanted to destroy in a brutal way that day. Sometimes boasting, shooting and hanging is too good for you. When it was finished and the ceremony finished, and he was trying to scare us to do, sabotage and other things, then we were marched in sections that we were working in the factory so we wouldn't cause any disorder or any sabotage. There were beautiful facilities inside that were not used by us, by all the other workers. We had outhouses, and we were told when we can use them rather than not to use them when we needed them and inside the factory. When we marched, we had to keep cadence and sing. And on both sides of us were Ukrainian guards. In most of the camps that I was in, there were a few Germans, but most of them were security people, Ukrainian guards that had the same weapons as the Germans and the same right to do with us whatever they wanted. You didn't get anything extra. One slice of bread, depending how they sliced it, and they didn't weigh it, and a bowl of soup that was brought out in the thermos, things like you saw in one of the barracks, and it was sometimes distributed by somebody that worked in the kitchen, but sometimes there was a bad German, and he says, we gotta make it faster. So with a bayonet, he was kind of nudging him. So by the time you got a ladle of soup, it was half gone, or the guy didn't go to the bottom to get something. So it was just sometimes like bouillon, and some of it was Maggi, M-A-G-G-I bouillon on there. When we first got in there, everybody wanted the bottom bunk, so people were getting hurt going in upstairs, and some of the ones were not. When you came back from work, you got in there. In some barracks, they had a burrow that they had some lumber in there, and we could light it for heating. Other than that, you just slept on plain wood. 3 weeks into that camp, we walk out, and we being counted on a Friday morning. And in fact, the only way I knew when my dad was killed was there was a religious guy, and he says it's Shabbos, when we bench, Rosh Chodesh, Sivan. I don't know, it's Nisan or Sivan, I get confused. And that's how I looked up the anniversary of my father's death. We walked out Friday morning, we worked, then we went into the camp, we ate, then we walked out, and then when we came in at night, the guards say 3 people missing. They took 10 person for each one, laid them out on the ground right in the middle, 10, 10, and 10, Friday night. There was no count till the next morning. When I got up next morning, there were only shoes left of the bodies that they took away, because I don't know how they were killed, and my father's boots were right there in the middle, so that's the only way that I knew that he was gone. Now I was with him, and I don't know if humanly I can describe what it is when you're next to your father and you come in from work and they announce the 3 people and they don't even wait, and they take your father away from you, and you grab his hand like he grabbed yours when you came off the transport, and you want to go with him, and you say yes, yes, and the Germans tear you away and say, whenever we want you, we'll get you. Go into the barracks and get up in the morning. But there's one thing about us Jews, that life must go on. And the only thing, when this happened, and I don't repeat it too often, I had a very bad temper, and it's expressed without me saying a word. You can look at my face, and you can see what I did. And my father said to me, please, Moniak, lose your temper and you'll survive. And those are the last words that I had from my father. And every so often, you never think about this when you speak like this, but I can close my eyes and see the act of what was happening. And at those times, it's again, when you're undernourished, it all seems like a dream. This couldn't happen to me. It couldn't happen to me. I was transferred to Mielec. I remember walking, and I was probably the smallest kid, so I always tried to walk in the middle so they wouldn't stick me with a bayonet. So they called me in, and they had a stamp with KL, which stands for Konzentrationslager, and they set me down, and they tried to strap me in, but I said, no, and they tried to put the KL on my forehead. Well, there's not enough skin there to do anything, so they did, and the way they did it is they would penetrate you and then smear blue ink on it for it to go in and mix. Nothing happened. There wasn't enough to hold, so they took my right arm and they experimented, and they wrapped a needle around the dowel or pencil, I don't know what it was, and they started poking. So it's unevenly poked, And I can't tell you how deep sometimes it went because they didn't go easy, just up and down, and they did this KL. Let me tell you, I mean, we might be mad at the old generation in Poland and in Germany, but the new generation is an entirely different thing. That doesn't mean that they don't have any skinheads, and that doesn't mean that, but we have them in the United States and we have the ISIS. But realize this, these are well-educated youngsters. They ask the same questions as you ask, and they have the same feelings that you have. And they realize what it is to be killed. Not all of them, but most of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
In order to make this the factory of death, they needed to construct ovens here as well. And they began the process of taking bids from various different companies who wished to have their product used in the factory of death. The winner was not chosen because they were cheaper. The winning oven, the bids for the winning ovens went to Topf & Sons, again a reputable company in Berlin who had for years been engaged in making cremation ovens, but they adapted their product. They perfected their oven to be used in the Nazi death factory. What was special? Why would their oven be chosen? Well, here's what they said. We can make an oven that can burn the Jewish victims faster. 20 minutes. Not 40, not 60 like the regular cremation ovens. 20 minutes we can do it. We can burn not only one Jewish body at a time, we can do 7 corpses at one time. Take us, the most effective cremation ovens you can ask for, 7 corpses at one time. That's why Topf & Sons won the bid. The most efficient ovens in the killing process. And those are the ovens you see here today. After the war, they denied knowing any wrongdoing. Oh, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't aid in the killing apparatus. Yet, 5 of their members came down to inspect to see how the ovens were doing. Can they really claim they didn't know what their ovens were being used for? They stood right here and watched the Jews burning in the ovens. What you're seeing is evidence, living testimony right in front of you of the horrors of the Nazis and all the companies that worked with them to perfect the killing, destroying, plundering, and cremation process of our Jewish brethren.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah v'yilmad divra hirutei v'yamnich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'hayed hol bet Yisrael b'agalau b'zman kariv v'imru amen Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach l'olam olmei olmaya Ishbarach Ishtabach Vitpoar Vitramam Vitnasei Vithadar Vithale Vithalal Shmei de Kutsha Brichu Ve'elam in Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tush B'chata V'Nehamata Damiran Be'alma V'Imru Amen Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'haim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Amen.
We know all the stories about the Warsaw Ghetto, the horrible conditions people had to live under. And this couple managed to live through the ghetto But they weren't sent to Treblinka. The couple was sent to this place. When they arrived into that first building, they were gassed. The couple was my Bubby and my Sadie, my grandparents. And then their bodies were rolled up all this way to this horrible place. And their bodies were burned. And their ashes went up this tall chimney. And it fell on that city, the city of Lublin. And it fell on the people walking, and on their clothes, and on their cars. And they did nothing. They knew what was happening here. The evidence was in the air. The ash was falling all day and all night on that city. Just look how close we are. They knew it was happening here. They did nothing. And then they plant a rose garden here. You know the word chutzpah? Callousness. They plant a rose garden fertilized with the ashes of my Bubby and my Zadie and my grandparents. And the farms around here uses the ash from them. How could you be so callous to do things like that and do nothing? The only thing that people can depend on that are Jews are each other. You need to remember that. And while their bodies were burning here, they didn't know that they had a new grandchild that was born to them. And ironically, that grandchild was born in a Siberian labor camp. And that's me. My name is Rose. I never knew what a grandparent's hugs were, what a grandparent's kisses were, what holiday celebrations and Passover seders were like. Never had that. If you're lucky and you have even one grandparent, even one, that's the first phone call you need to make, because they gave you life through your parents and you owe them everything. And you promise me one thing besides making the calls to your grandparents. You're going to raise Jewish children, because we lost too many. We just lost too many. You've got to do that. And you've got to take our stories, take them to heart. And know one thing, we need to remain strong and proud as Jews. We went through hell. All the places we visited, we went through hell. But we have finally, we have our own state. We have Israel. We've got to support Israel and back Israel. It's our home. America is the home of our hearts, but Israel is the home of our neshama, our soul. And you have to keep it that way. And right or wrong, you have to support it. And just be strong, proud that you are Jewish. And never again do we need or want to see ashes of our people go up any chimneys. Enough. We've had enough. Now we want to get away from this place. We need to leave. You've seen it all. You've heard it all. And let's go.
Carry on the other.
Even to adults, you have to talk to them because it's we really count on you because you are a flame for the future. Don't forget. You know what? Grandparents are very, very important. I wish I would have to, but I didn't. Who knows? I had so many uncles and aunts and cousins. And who knows where they are? Maybe in this ashes, who knows? Never knew what happened to them. It's really, it's very something. And God is really, I was also, my father was in labor camp in Russia and all that. I don't know, because I was loved by my parents and did everything for me. And even birthday, they tried to do something for me. And I don't know, I told you the story, but that they put an orange next to my pillow, if I had, I don't know what pillow, whatever. And I woke up and this orange was so beautiful and smelled nicely. So I took a bite. But if you took a bite in orange, what is it? Bitter, right? So my mother said, we have to peel this orange. I don't know where they got the orange. Because we had to stand in line to have bread. And so you know what this was. So you know what? It's a lot of things. And I must say, I was always, even all the story, what happened and what this was so bad.
What did you say?
She's gonna have Jewish kids and marry someone.
Here. The baby doesn't know what's going on.
He's really just.
Out of the ruins and rubble, out of the smoke, out of a night of struggle, can we see a ray of hope? One pale thin ray reaching for the day. We can build a beautiful city. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can build a beautiful city. Not a city of angels. We can build a city of men. We may not reach the ending, but we can start. slowly but surely mending, brick by brick, heart by heart. Now, maybe now, we start learning how we can build a beautiful city. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can build a beautiful city. Not a city of angels, but we can build a city of men. When your trust is all shattered, when your faith is all killed, you can give up bitter and battered, or you can slowly start to build. We can build a beautiful city. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can build a beautiful city. Not a city of angels, but finally a city of men.
It tears at my heart and it rips at my soul to watch you children sob without control, to see barrack after barrack filled with shoes and human hair, mounds of suitcases and brushes like an unbelievable nightmare. If the world had only cared, how many could have lived? But the silence proved fatal. For them, we can't forgive. So many questions begin to rise. If we don't speak out, if we remain passive, 6 million lives will cease to live. So with lumps in our throats and with tears in our eyes, humanity's past can't be denied. We must remember our past, and we won't let it happen again. And if not us, who? And if not now, when?
You are little flames, and take a torch and pass it on to the next generation. Be strong and keep the stories alive. And you saw so much here, so much pain and so much death. We are now free here and going now to Eretz Israel, our land. So please keep the torch very high and pass it on to the next generation.
We sang a song in Treblinka, Ani Ma'amin. I believe that we should start talking about the Holocaust in quality and not quantity. Many of the ashes that lie behind you could have been of Einsteins, Salks, musicians, poets, painters, artists, negotiators that could have solved some of the problems we're having right now. Believe that we are missing what these victims could have created for us, cured our diseases, and improved our lifestyle, and maybe we all could have lived in peace forever.
Marianne is speaking for her husband, who is a Holocaust survivor. This is what he would have said, she thought.
Well, first of all, he would be proud to see all of you here today. He would tell you to be strong, study hard, be kind to your fellow neighbors, good and bad, and do the best you can to bring our faith to other people.
This is not the time for me to do a lot of stories or talking. You are cold, I am cold. But I just want to tell you one thing. We went through a week. We dragged you to the dead valleys of this land. But now I tell you, we're going to go to the take you to the high mountains. And let's go for
Let's go. Not yet to Israel. We have one more stop, but we're almost there.
Okay, let's get out of this
Bathrooms are
place.
right over